The first time they told me my service dog wasn't allowed, he was lying flat on the floor, not moving a muscle. We were in the community clubhouse for a residents' meeting. Fluorescent lights buzzing, stale coffee smell in the air, cheap folding chairs scraping tile. Atlas was at my feet in a perfect downstay, his vest on, his leash loose, his head resting on his paws. He'd been there 15 quiet minutes before the HOA president decided he was suddenly a problem. "Pets aren't allowed in here," she announced from the front of the room, voice sharp enough to cut through the low murmur of neighbors chatting. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward us like we'd dragged in a wild boar instead of a 70-pound Labrador. "He's not a pet," I said, keeping my voice level. "He's a service dog." Her name was Linda Hart, but everyone called her the Maple Grove Queen behind her back. Late 50s, perfectly highlighted bob, expensive cardigan with tiny pearl buttons, reading glasses on a chain. She looked at Atlas like he was a roach on a salad plate. "We have a no animals policy in the clubhouse," she said, tapping the stack of printed community standards in front of her. "We have to think of allergies and liability. You'll have to remove him or step outside." Atlas flicked one ear, then went still again. My heart did the opposite. I could feel it starting to pound, that old familiar surge of adrenaline that never asked whether the threat was real or imagined. The room seemed to close in, voices rising, the echo bouncing too loud, too fast. "Ma'am," I said, forcing myself to look at her, to breathe slow. "He's a trained psychiatric service dog. I'm allowed to bring him into common areas under federal law, ADA, Fair Housing Act. He's mitigating a disability. He's not going anywhere." A couple of neighbors shifted uncomfortably, which is suburban language for "this is getting awkward and I wish it wasn't near my folding chair." Linda's mouth thinned. "If it's emotional support," she said briskly, "you can leave him at home. Comfort animals aren't covered. We can't have every dog in the neighborhood show up because someone's anxious." The way she said anxious made my skin crawl, like it was a bad habit instead of the reason I woke up sweating 3 nights a week. I took a breath and felt my hand shake on the armrest. Atlas nudged my knee with his nose, just once, grounding me. "Service dog," I repeated. "Task trained. I have documentation if the board needs it. The law says—" "The law also says," she cut in, raising her voice, "that this is private property and the HOA sets rules. This is disruptive. You're disrupting the meeting." I looked down at Atlas, then back up at her. "The only one disrupting anything is you, Linda." She didn't like that either. 3 days later, the first violation letter arrived. "Unauthorized animal in community facility. First offense, $100 fine." At the bottom, "Future violations may result in loss of amenity access and legal action." The letterhead had the same tasteful maple leaf logo as the brochure that had sold me on this place 2 years ago. Quiet living, strong community, modern amenities. They left out, power trip included. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm a 36-year-old former paramedic. I lasted 10 years in the back of ambulances before a rollover accident and a stack of ugly calls left me with a spine that complains in cold weather and a brain that sometimes thinks it's still on scenes that ended years ago. After the crash, I couldn't ride in the rig without tasting metal and hearing glass shatter that wasn't there. The VA therapist was the one who suggested a service dog. Atlas came from a program that trains dogs specifically for PTSD and panic disorders. He can interrupt flashbacks, create space between me and a crowd, lead me out of a store when my heart rate spikes. He knows how to wake me up from nightmares without sending me swinging. He has more hours of training than some cops I've met. When I bought the townhouse in Maple Grove, I did my homework. The Fair Housing Act, the ADA, HUD guidance on assistance animals and housing. I knew the difference between an emotional support certificate you print off the internet and a real service dog with tasks. I even emailed our old HOA manager before closing, told her I had a service dog, got back a short reply, "No problem, just make sure he's under control." That manager left. Linda got elected. Suddenly, everything was a problem. The clubhouse incident was just the beginning. After I refused to pay the first fine, the letters doubled. Unauthorized animal on pool deck. He was lying under my chair while I dipped my feet after physical therapy.
Unauthorized animal in fitness center. I walked through, never even got on a treadmill. I do my actual workouts in my garage. Linda began copying the whole board on every email, plus the property manager, plus a law firm's name appeared in bold footer like a threat. I tried reason first. I sent a detailed email explaining the ADA's definition of a service animal. I attached the Department of Justice FAQ, where it says explicitly that HOAs and landlords must make reasonable accommodations for service dogs, that they're not pets, that you can't exclude them from common areas. I even offered to provide a note from my doctor stating I have a disability and that Atlas is trained to perform tasks. Linda wrote back 2 sentences. We are not a public business. We're a private community. Our rules stand. Here's something every HOA board member should understand. Federal fair housing law doesn't care about your sense of importance. If you manage or control housing, you're on the hook, whether you call it a community, a resort, or Linda's kingdom. But at that point, I was tired. I didn't want a legal war. I just wanted to be able to walk through my own lobby with a shaking hand and a lecture. Then they escalated.
One afternoon, I came back from walking Atlas around the block and found a bright orange notice taped to my door. Notice of hearing, possible revocation of amenity access and lease enforcement action. They'd scheduled a board hearing to decide if I would lose my key fob to the clubhouse, pool, and gym. The letter actually said, continued violations may result in eviction proceedings through association counsel. I'm an owner. They don't even know which threats apply to me. That was when something in me snapped from avoid conflict to document everything. I bought a little spiral notebook and started writing down every interaction. Date, time, who said what. I saved every email. I turned on the voice memo app on my phone before stepping into any meeting or conversation with board members, because in my state, one-party consent recording is legal. When Linda confronted me in the lobby one day, jabbing a manicured finger toward Atlas and announcing loudly for everyone to hear that some people are faking disabilities to bring their pets everywhere now, I didn't argue. I just asked, clearly, are you refusing to allow my service dog in this building? She said, yes, we are. The little red light on my phone blinked happily in my pocket. That night, I went on the HUD website and found the section on filing a fair housing complaint. Then I called the number for a local disability rights legal center and told a paralegal what had been going on. She listened, then said, do you have everything in writing? I almost laughed. You have no idea. We filed 2 complaints, one with HUD for disability discrimination under the Fair Housing Act, and one with the Department of Justice regarding denial of access in common areas. I attached copies of every violation letter, every email, and a transcript of the lobby confrontation. Then I went back to my life as much as possible. I still had bills, therapy, a teenager to co-parent with my ex, and a dog to walk. The HOA kept sending fines. I kept not paying them. Months went by. Linda held her little hearings where the same 3 people nodded along with everything she said. They voted to suspend my amenity access. My key fob stopped working on the clubhouse door. Honestly, I didn't care. Atlas and I preferred the park down the street anyway. They'd griped, postured, written threats on letterhead. I'd complained quietly to people whose signatures actually moved federal paper. That's why when the email came from a senior equal opportunity specialist at HUD scheduling an on-site investigation, it felt almost unreal, like the cavalry was coming, but in business casual. 2 weeks later, on a gray Tuesday morning, Linda unlocked the clubhouse door for what she thought was a meeting about a minor resident issue. She stepped inside, all pearls and posture, and came face to face with a woman in a navy blazer laying a leather folder on the folding table. "Good morning," the woman said, flipping it open to show an ID badge with a federal seal. "My name is Karen Patel. I'm with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. We need to talk about your animal policies." For the first time since she'd yanked my flag, no, my dog, from her imaginary throne,
I watched Linda's confidence falter.
Linda tried to play it off with her usual tight smile, but I heard the crack in her voice. "We've already addressed the situation," she said. "It's just a misunderstanding. Our community has a no pets policy in shared areas, and one resident refuses to follow the same rules as everyone else." The woman from HUD, Karen Patel, didn't even sit down. She laid a leather folder on the plastic table and flipped it open, badge and ID facing the board. "I've reviewed your rules," she said, her tone calm in a way that made it clear she wasn't here to negotiate. "I've also reviewed Mr. Cole's complaint, your emails, and a recording of you telling him that people fake disabilities to bring pets everywhere." A flush crept up Linda's neck. The treasurer shifted in his chair. "Let me be very clear," Patel continued. "The Fair Housing Act applies to this association. You are housing providers. You must make reasonable accommodations for residents with disabilities. That includes permitting service and assistance animals in housing and common areas, even when you have a no pets policy." Linda opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "We have to think about allergies, safety, liability. If we let one person bring a dog, everyone will claim they have anxiety." Patel didn't blink. "You are allowed to ask exactly 2 questions. Is the dog required because of a disability, and what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? You are not allowed to demand medical records, decide who looks disabled enough, or threaten eviction because you dislike an accommodation." She turned to me. "For the record, Mr. Cole, is Atlas required because of a disability, and what is he trained to do?" My throat felt dry, but Atlas pressed his shoulder into my leg, a quiet reminder. "Yes, ma'am. PTSD and panic disorder. He interrupts flashbacks, creates space and crowds, and guides me out when I start to panic." Patel nodded once, then faced the board again. "That's all the law requires," she said. "Your refusal to allow his access, your threats of fines and eviction are discriminatory. HUD takes that seriously." The room went very quiet. Even the vending machine hum seemed to fade. The treasurer cleared his throat. "What happens if we don't cooperate?" "Then this moves from my office to the Department of Justice. They can seek civil penalties and damages in federal court. I'm here to give you a chance to fix it voluntarily." She slid a typed agreement across the table. I watched Linda stare at it like it might bite. 2 weeks later, a very different letter showed up in my mailbox. The board rescinded every fine, restored my amenity access, and inserted one new line into the rules. Service and assistance animals are permitted in all housing and common areas as required by federal law. No apology. Bullies rarely apologize, but pinned to the board bulletin board for all residents.